Okay.
This meeting is being recorded. Hi, Rick.
Hello. I'm gonna ask iPad 3 if you would please type your name or identify yourself.
هادی چطوری؟ خوبم مرسی چه خبر؟
شما رو اینجا دارید
Okay. All right, so let's get started. All right, so this is a class on the agent visual inspection advisory. No, wait, no, agent visual inspection disclosure, the AVID. So, yes, it is on the AVID, and as I've said many times, that that the AVID is the most important the most important form that you are ever going to fill out if there is a lawsuit. So let's get going with this. Okay, California Civil Code states that both the listing agent and the selling agent that hold a real estate license has a duty to disclose to the buyer material defects known to the broker but unknown to and unobservable, that's a hard word to say, by the buyer. So they have a duty to do an inspection, a visual inspection. The agents have a duty by law to do a visual inspection. And CAR came up with this form, the AVID, that allows the agents to do this inspection, but it also does a little more. So I'm going to, I'm going to show you, let's see, there we go. Let me share my screen here. Where are you? Hold on, bear with me. Not that one, this one. Okay. All right. So if you go to car.org, you're going to go to Transaction Center. And then there's the, oh, where'd it go? There is this section that says Forms Advisor, Forms Tutor. I like teaching this form using this area because it explains something. Why does it keep going away? Sorry. All right, hold on. Okay, so we're going to go to Forms Tutor. So access Forms Tutor. So it has a whole bunch of forms here that, and it's not all forms, but it has a whole bunch of forms that it tells you, it goes into a little depth about the form. And I like to use this for the agent visual inspection disclosure, because if you see these blue dots, if you click on these blue dots, then it gives a little explanation. So here's the explanation about about the agent visual inspection. For the last 20 years, one of the real estate agent's most significant responsibility has been the statutory duty to conduct a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection on the on-site accessible areas of the residential property containing 1 to 4. So this is just for one residential 1 to 4. Given all the importance attributed to this duty, it's almost unfathomable that the legislator only provided real estate agents a few lines to write down their findings, and of course, everything will probably go to a text overflow addendum if you're doing this right. There are still some agents who do not conduct an inspection, do so only in a cursory fashion, or try to delegate the inspection obligation to a third party, such as a professional home inspector. So just doing a home inspection, I just had somebody who did an AVID and wrote, "See home inspection report." That doesn't cut it, because the agent has a statutory duty to do this inspection. It's required by law. And had a difficult seller and she said, my seller doesn't like all these defects that I'm finding because it's a fixer-upper. Well, it's to protect your seller, because things that you can see that maybe the buyer themselves didn't see, it's good to point these things out, because after the fact, after everything's closed, then it becomes, you didn't tell me about this. So this is a duty that every agent, whether you're on the buyer or the seller side, has to do. So it's really, really important to do this correctly. Okay, so what's this little box? Page 1 specifies the agent's legal obligation as well as that of the buyer of the property. Page 1 also clarifies for the buyer the limits that the agent's legal duty, as well as recommending that the buyer obtain professional home inspection to supplement the agent's inspection and disclosure. So this is why brokers want you to use this form, not to just write on the TDS that this was found, because there's no room on the TDS either. So brokers want you to use this form because it tells the buyer what the agent's obligation is. So it says that California law requires us to do a visual inspection, but then the next paragraph, it says California law does not require the agent to inspect the following: the areas that are not reasonably and normally accessible. What is that? You're not going to go into the attic. You're not going to go into the crawl space. Those are not reasonably or normally accessible. Areas off-site of the property, public records or permits. You're not going to look at public records or permits. Common areas of planned developments, condominiums, and stock cooperatives. So that's why it's important to use this form, because not only does it say that that the law requires you to do this visual inspection, and your question about, oh, can we just videotape everything and use that as our AVID? That's not, although that is kind of you doing the visual inspection, you're relying on the buyer to watch that and to point out what you would point out. because not everybody sees everything the same way. So you're going to look at this with a critical eye, and that's what's important because buyers sometimes have rose-colored glasses. So, so it's important you can utilize the video, but you still have to fill this out as to what you see needs to be pointed out. So that's what's really, really important here. And why is it important? Because if there is a dispute regarding non-disclosure of some issue, then the attorneys are going to look at this, and they're going to say, they're going to look at this report or this disclosure, and if you only write one little thing here, one little thing there, and when you're deposed, they're going to say, how long did it take you to fill this out? And you're probably going to say, oh, it took me about 45 minutes to an hour. And they're going to say, it took you 45 minutes to an hour to write 3 little lines. So that's why it's so important to be so precise and so detailed about what you're seeing. So it goes into the limitations I mentioned. You're not going to climb on the roof. You're not going to go in the attic. You're not going to look behind furniture. You're not going to move things. You're not going to test appliances out. Size of the property improvement. You're not going to take a tape measure out. You're not going to give them environmental hazards unless the environmental hazard is bubbling in the middle of the property. If you're like the Clampetts, who suddenly the Clampetts shot a gun and oil started coming up from the middle of the property, then you're unless you can see that, you're not going to notate it. Okay. Analysis for items disclosed as the result of the agent's visual inspection by you're not going to analyze what the contents are, what you find, what you see. You're not going to say, like we always say, evidence of a prior water leak on the ceiling. You don't know it was a water leak. You're just going to say there's a stain on the ceiling, a brown stain, a black stain. You're not going to say toxic mold. You don't know it's toxic mold. You don't know anything about it. You're just going to point out what you see. So that's really important. And like I said, this is why we want you to use this. It's required by all offices to use this form in order to do your visual inspection, because not only does it say what your responsibilities are, it also says what you are not responsible to do. So that's really, really important. I need to move this. Hold on to the next. So pages 2 and 3 then list the rooms typically found in a residential property. For every room that it's found in the particular property, as well as the property's outside and yard, the agent should conduct a visual inspection and write down any material items. And this is what's important, and this is why I like using this. Agent should conduct a visual inspection and write down any material items that may negatively affect, once again, negatively affect a buyer's decision to buy or the price the buyer is willing to pay. You are trying to talk this person out of this purchase by showing them what's wrong with it. That's a concept that so many agents um, don't understand. Um, that it is not, I use this all the time, it is not the quartz countertops. It's the chip in the quartz countertops. It's the scratches in the hardwood floors. It's the scuff on the wall. It's the stain on the ceiling. That's what should be in your AVID. And don't tell me that new construction does not have defects, because they do. Nobody is perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect property. I'm telling you right now, I can go through in new construction and I can point out everything that's wrong with the property, because no builder is going to be perfect and do it exactly right. So that's what you need to point out. You need to say what's wrong with the property. You know, if the buyer didn't see the chip in the countertop, you need to point it out. And then if they sign it off, then you're good to go. But if that chip is going to bother them, then that's going to bother them. And Mr. Seller, I have to point out everything that I see, because I know that in your eyes, your property is the most pristine thing that has ever been. But I need the buyer to be aware of what is visually wrong with the property, so that they can't come back after the fact and say, you didn't tell me about this. And you know, if you don't want to tell the seller, you don't want to tell them in the SBQ or the TDS, I need to tell them. And that's another point of contention, is that sellers don't want to disclose defects. But you as the agent, if you're aware of a defect, you need to disclose that. If you know of something, you need to disclose it. So once again, it is everything you see or hear, and I'll show you on if you're hearing something like if there's a lot of traffic noise, or you're in a flight path, other observed or known conditions not specified above. That's where you need to write this stuff, is that what you hear and smell, because everything else is visual. But if you hear something, or there is an odor that, you know, you live, I mean, there are houses that, you know, that are next to where they make sriracha. Although I hear that they're not really making sriracha anymore, because there's a shortage of peppers. But anyways, that could be a problem. Up by Castaic, we're now dealing with Chiquita Canyon, I think it is. By Castaic, some residents, there is an odor coming from this plant, just like in Porter Ranch, what was it, Santa Susana, or yeah, I can't remember what it was, but that's stuff that you have to, if you see it, if you smell it, if you hear it, you need to disclose it. It's just that. Gladys Kravitz told you on your first the first open house that you conducted, that, oh well, you know that no, I don't want to say that. That they were selling pot out of the back door or something, whatever Gladys Kravitz. You need to disclose that. Your seller may deny it, but you need, according to a neighbor, this is what, because you can bet your bottom dollar, as soon as that closes, that Gladys Kravitz is going to come running to the buyer and say, "Did they tell you? Did they tell you?" Yeah, they told me. Yeah, I don't care. Okay, you got to disclose this stuff. Disclose, disclose, disclose. So this section, you just go room to room, pointing out everything that you see that is wrong. You see, hear, smell that is wrong with the property. If you're aware of anything else, you write it down. And then this disclosure is based on a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of reasonably and normally accessible areas of the property on the date specified, and the brokerage that did the inspection, and then who did the inspection. You have a team and somebody on your team did the inspection. That person, whoever did the inspection, needs to sign this. Okay. I've had agents who have taken listings way up in Northern California. That's fine. You can do your license in California. You can take a listing anywhere in California. Although I would recommend referring it out, because the way they do business in other cities and other areas are different than what the way they do them here in Southern California. I'm telling you that right now. And also there's local ordinances and local inspections that are required. I just had to settle a really big lawsuit because the agent took a listing in an area that they weren't familiar with, and there was supposed to be a pre-closing inspection that didn't happen, and there was a lot of violations, and the seller sued, and we had to pay out a bunch of money in order to get out of it. So yeah, if you're not familiar with the area, I recommend you refer it out. But my point being is that if you're taking a listing out of town, if there's an agent up there, that make an arrangement with the agent, do the visual inspection, or have the agent walk around with the video camera and pointing things out of what they saw. As long as you're disclosing that this is how the AVID was done, then it's fine. Remember when COVID was happening, that's the way we had to do our AVIDs. There was an addendum attached saying that, due to COVID restrictions, this was done via FaceTime. It was, however it was done, or, stuff like that. So whoever's doing it signs this. And if it's an unusual manner, then you need to disclose that. And then everybody acknowledges that they've gotten a copy of it. And that's basically the AVID. The only other thing that I want to point out in regards to the AVID is that when the seller is doing their TDS, you're going to check on the last page as the listing agent that see attached agent visual inspection disclosures, see attached AVID. So until, for the listing agents, until that document is produced, until that is produced, that TDS isn't complete. So for those of you, like I said, before, those of you who wait until the very last minute in order to do their AVID while they're doing the final walkthrough, and then give it to the other side, if there's some buyers removed all contingencies. If there's something on your AVID that the buyer doesn't like, they can cancel that transaction and walk away. So it's important that when the seller's disclosures goes out, you've got 7 days to do that, this goes out. If you're doing a listing appointment before you get the listing, walk around, do your AVID. Or do it within the first few days of the listing, one of your open houses. get this done. If you're the listing agent, get it done early and get it to the other side. So, is there anything else? There really isn't anything else that I wanted to say about this. So any questions? Who is that?
It's Janice.
Janice. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Rich. With that lawsuit you said you just settled,
Mhm.
that county required a closing inspection. So we don't here in LA, right? It's just the initial inspection and then we do like a final walkthrough, but it's not
Right,
required.
but this is a city inspection that was required, and there was
Okay.
infractions on the property. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Mhm.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? I'm not seeing anybody. I anticipated it being a short class, but this is, like I said, it's one of the most important pieces of paper that you're going to fill out because it's really, really important regarding disclosures. And make sure that you disclose everything you see, hear, or smell. So it's really important. All right. So it's a short class.
Rich, I'm sorry. I have a
Yes,
question.
go ahead. Sure.
Sorry. I just want to reiterate. You said if you're in a flight path and you hear planes, you should
Sure.
note that.
Sure.
Okay.
If you know, I mean,
Stupid
if
question.
it's
What about
so-
like barking dogs or something like that?
barking dogs? Sure. If you're on there on several occasions and you've heard the same barking dog, I would absolutely disclose it. Yes.
Okay.
Because that's a nuisance to some people. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine lives in rent control, and she's, she just renewed her lease, and in the lease it says no pets, and they allowed pets, and this dog is barking all the time. That's
Yeah.
People are entitled to the peaceful enjoyment of their domain, and so if that's interfering with that, then that's an issue. Or maybe somebody doesn't like dogs. I had a listing that there was a common area outside, and even though it doesn't say common areas, you're supposed to, but it was right outside the front door. There was a big area, and people would congregate and whatnot. But there were people who let their dogs off leash there, and I disclosed that because who knows, the buyer could have been afraid of dogs, and it's like you're walking out and then there's all these dogs running around, and maybe they run up to you, they're friendly, but people freak out.
Yeah.
And so
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Rich,
all right,
I have a quick
Yeah.
question.
sure.
Thank you for this class, by the way.
Sure.
On the TDS, when you represent the buyer and the listing agent sends you the TDS, which you want right away, on
Right.
the bottom, on the back page, it has about that the buyer's agent is supplying their TDS. I mean, excuse me, their AVID with it. But we haven't
Right.
usually done it. So they check the box and we sign it, but we don't usually have it by then. Because I always want to see the TDS and SPQ before I do anything on an AVID
Right.
buyer.
Right. But even if you don't, I mean, you can try going, you're saying the buyer's agent?
Yeah, buyer's agent, when we get the TDS from the listing agent, on the back page, it says the listing agent, attached AVID, and then they check
Right.
the box for us and it says attached AVID buyer's agent.
Right. Right. And so you're saying it's the listing agent who's not supplying you the AVID
No,
that
I'm
you
saying
haven't done.
No, I'm saying that when they give us the AVID, the listing site, as the buyer's agent, my signature is on there that I'm giving my AVID, but I'm not giving my AVID at that time. But when we return it signed, it's on there signed. So
But
it's just a little.
but you're the buyer's agent. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Nobody gives a shit about the buyer's
Okay.
the buyer's agent AVID, except the brokerage. No, you have to do it. You have to do it. But it's not as important. I mean, you could give the buyer's agent AVID at the end of the transaction, it's not as important as the listing agent, and that's why they've made it that the TDS isn't complete without the listing agent's AVID. But they didn't want to give that same power to the buyer's agent, because a buyer's agent could hold up a deal and to hold back the AVID and say, well, we're not agreeing to. So the buyer's agent AVID can come, at the end of escrow. It doesn't matter as long as it's done. And let's be clear, there are some brokerages out there who don't require AVIDs. Every one of my offices and every office that I've ever worked in require them as part. And for those reasons that I gave you, is that not only does it say what we have to do, it says what we're not going to do. So, but there are those even listing agents who just check off the box, nothing noted. And if you're not the listing agent and that's the way they want to do business, I can't tell another brokerage how to do business. But if it's another KW, absolutely, I would want to know.
Which, Rich, makes me laugh. If you remember the AVID I got when I was the buyer, and the guy didn't even put the address on it, and he did nothing.
Yeah, it's just like, it's ridiculous. The city that the inspection was in was Lakewood. Mitra asked. So yes, if you take the AVID early, would you show it to the seller before they fill out the TDS? Well, I mean, you could show it to the seller. It's not going to do any harm showing it to the seller, but yeah, you could, Dave. Would it be better to take pictures and show the items you listed? You can, if I've said this before, if you use Glide, go out there and do some research on Glide, which is an way to do disclosures in real estate. They give you the ability, to attach pictures to the AVID. And I actually think that the CAR form you can do the same, but they make it a little easier to do it. So that's Glide, GLIDE. Oh, I meant to put in the put in the chat. There was something. Wait, hold on. Oh, no. That's not what I wanted. My computer. There we go. Downloads. There we go. I just put in. There's a quick guide to the agent visual inspection. I should put in at the top of the class. But for those of you, just grab it. You can download it now. It's just from CAR. It gives you a little quick guide about the AVID. Any other questions?
Rich, do they charge for Glide now?
No, they do not. They do not charge. I mean, there is, just like any other of those, agent apps, there is like a pro version, but there is a free version that is just as good. So yeah.
Thank you.
Try it out. I've used it, and you can send your seller the TDS and the SPQ to fill out. You could do your AVID from there, other disclosures too. So yeah, just check it out. Do a fake transaction between yourself. So, any other questions?
What is it? What is it? We just go to glide.com.
I think it is glide.com. Wait, let me look. Hold on.
Yeah, it's Glide. It's Glide.
It is just Glide.
I have a free version. I use the free version. I don't know there was a pay, but I use the free one, and I only use it for AVID. But it's fantastic because you can use your phone, take a photo, you fill it out, it sends it to your email if you've already done it, and you can go back and correct it. It's great. Actually,
Christine, try it for the TDS and the SPQ, because it asks the questions to the sellers. It's like a survey. So it makes it more user friendly to
Okay,
fill out the form.
Okay,
Try it.
I'm gonna try it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right.
Hey, Rich,
That's
I have
it.
a question.
Yes, okay. Yes.
I actually wrote it in the chat thing here.
You
That's-
did?
Yep.
Where? Oh, Alan. What is the best way to make a change on the AVID after the information becomes available? Do an addendum to the AVID.
Just an addendum form, straight form, right? And then just
Yeah,
make,
just a regular addendum and say this is, you'll probably check other and to AVID dated whatever the date you filled it out. Okay.
okay. Can I ask one other quick question?
No. Yes,
Good.
go ahead.
So here's my question. What if on the TDS, the seller leaves out some basic information that you know about?
Mhm.
I put it on my AVID.
Right.
Is that now considered a disclosure that I've disclosed this to the buyer? Or
Yes.
does now the seller have to go back and change theirs?
No, I mean, it depends on what it is, really. If it's really, I mean, like, give me an example.
Okay, I sold a house that had
Right.
been an alcohol recovery facility.
Right.
And the
Okay.
seller didn't want to put that on their TDS. And I was adamant that obviously I'm going to put this on there.
Right.
And we did. The buyer's agent came back about a few weeks later and started accusing us of never telling him this and that they were going to sue us. And I suggested that they read my AVID, which everybody had signed, and it was over. There was no issue.
Right.
So
Exactly.
something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, it would have been nice for the seller to redo the thing, but if they, in that case, they're being adamant that they're not, just by you having knowledge of it and then disclosing it, it is disclosed.
Okay.
As you saw, because I remember this now and it went nowhere.
Right.
Yeah. So, yep.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so that's it. We ended a little early. Thank you so much. And I will be in town. So I'll see you the next time in 2 weeks. All right, take care. Thank you.